Have you noticed in every room, there's always that one person. They don't raise their voice. They don't interrupt. They don't try to dominate. They sit still. They observe. And when they finally speak, it shifts the entire atmosphere. No one argues. No one challenges. Not because they said something brilliant, but because of how they said it. When they said it, why they waited. That's not charisma. That's not coincidence. That's camouflage. Strategic. Silent. Intentional. Let's make one thing clear. The most powerful person in the room never fights for power. They don't battle for attention. They don't need to win the argument, because they already own the frame. You see, while everyone else is busy trying to prove, the quiet one is busy positioning. They're not reacting. They're not defending. They're not explaining. They're guiding, without pushing. Influencing, without being noticed. And that is the most dangerous form of control. You think they're harmless because they smile, because they nod, because they let you speak. But underneath, they're setting the tone, controlling the rhythm, and redirecting perception sentence by sentence. This isn't manipulation. This is precision. This is power without ego. The kind of power that doesn't show up in words, but in structure, in timing, in presence. This is what I call conversational camouflage. The subtle art of masking dominance behind neutral language, not to attack, but to bend the frame so softly you never realize it's happening. You feel safe. You feel seen. You feel like you're in charge. But step by step you're being nudged, shifted, directed. And before you know it, you've arrived at a conclusion that was never yours to begin with. You don't need to speak louder. You don't need to explain more. You just need to reduce the friction. So their resistance never activates, because the one who hides their pressure ends up guiding the room. Let me show you how. Most people think control means confrontation. They think to lead, they have to push. To be taken seriously, they have to challenge, speak louder, sharpen their tone, argue with logic. But that's surface-level psychology. That's noise. And noise is easy to ignore. The people who truly shape outcomes, they don't fight, they frame. And the deadliest frame is the one that looks like agreement. Let me walk you into it. There's a moment in conversation when someone expects you to react, to push back, to correct, to clarify your stance. And instead, you say softly, that makes sense. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. That's totally fair. What happens in that moment? They lower their guard. Their adrenaline drops. Their brain stops preparing to defend. They think you're on their side, that you've been neutralized. But what they don't see is that your agreement is just a mask. A beautiful one, designed not to protect you but to expose them. Because the moment they relax, you plant the seed. You say, yeah, that's fair. Though in some cases, I've seen something else unfold. You didn't reject them. You reframed them. They're still listening. But now they're leaning in. Not because you forced them to, but because you flowed with their rhythm and quietly changed the melody. Here's the power of this technique. People don't resist ideas. They resist the feeling of being opposed. You remove that tension, and suddenly they're open. Not because they agree with you, but because they feel safe around you. You've become the safe option, the stable force, the one who doesn't create conflict, but absorbs it, redirects it. This isn't about being agreeable. It's about using agreement as a cloak. This is camouflage. You let their words live while you slip your structure underneath. Now watch how it works in real life. A team meeting. Tensions high. Someone suggests a solution, clearly rushed, flawed. But you don't jump to attack. You say, "Makes sense. That approach definitely has merit. Though I wonder, if we took this angle, how would that play out?" Now, pause. You didn't challenge them. But suddenly, the entire group is recalibrating around your question, around your direction. They'll think it was their idea. They'll think the shift was natural. Because you never grabbed the steering wheel. You adjusted the road. That's the mask of agreement. Not because you're weak, but because you don't need credit to control. You just need to slip in unnoticed. There's no resistance, no heat, no clash, just presence, soft calibration. And they follow, not out of fear, but because it feels safe to move with you. So next time someone brings their ego into the room, don't fight it. Let it stand. Let it glow. And when they least expect it, bend the energy behind it. This is not manipulation. It's precision framing. It's leadership through stillness. Because when you speak softly and steer subtly, you become the only person no one saw coming. And in rooms full of noise, the one who wears silence wins. Toi U 800 to 160 WPM. Words don't need to be sharp to cut. Sometimes, the softest voice applies the most pressure, but only when used with precision. Let me show you a different kind of power. Not the kind that dominates by force, but the kind that steers through softness like a current beneath still water. Most people believe pressure must be loud, aggressive, visible. But strategic power isn't visible. It's felt. It's in the way you say. If that's what you believe, that's your call. It's up to you. These aren't neutral phrases. They're loaded. They sound passive, but they corner the other person psychologically. Why? Because they hand over responsibility. And with it, pressure. Now the other person must decide. Own the consequence. Live with the results. You didn't say no. You didn't argue. You simply stepped back. But in stepping back, you created a spotlight they now have to stand in. That's silent confrontation. Elegant, inevitable, and impossible to fight because you didn't throw a punch. You just removed the shield. Here's a real-world example. A colleague insists on rushing a presentation. You could challenge it. Instead, you say, "Sure, we can move ahead." If you're confident, it reflects the standard you want your name attached to. Now, pause. What happened? You didn't object. But now, they're second-guessing themselves. They feel exposed. And you didn't raise your voice or even show disapproval. You simply used implication. And implication triggers internal pressure, more powerful than any external force. Soft language then becomes a mirror. You hold it up and let them confront themselves. No blame, no conflict, just a gentle reflection with heavy consequence. Here's another weapon in this arsenal. Echo with slight emphasis. They say, "I just need to do it my way." You answer your way, soft tone. Raised eyebrow. Silence. That's not a question. That's a frame test. They now must defend. Justify. Dig deeper into their logic, which is exactly what you want. You haven't argued, but you've guided them without them realizing. This is the power of non-aggressive dominance. It doesn't provoke rebellion. It invites self-doubt. And people follow those who help them feel clear, even if that clarity is engineered. When done right, you'll notice a shift. They start seeking your approval, even when you haven't asked for it. They start adjusting their behavior not to please you, but to avoid the subtle tension you quietly install. So next time you want to lead a conversation, try this. Don't challenge. Reflect. Don't direct. Echo. Don't force. Imply. Let them walk into the decision themselves. But remember, you paved the path. You handed them the map. And you watched them follow a plan they thought was theirs. This is conversational pressure without conflict. No escalation. No defense walls. Just soft steering toward the outcome you designed. Because power isn't in the volume of your words. It's in the placement, the timing, the intention behind what seems harmless. And the ones who master that don't just win conversations. They reshape decisions, alliances, and perception itself. You're not just speaking anymore. You're sculpting reactions. Let me ask you something subtle. What if the most powerful move was not being seen at all? Not because you were hiding, but because your presence was so embedded. It became the background logic of the room. That's invisible steering. Let's unpack it. Every group, every conversation is a current. It flows in some direction. Fast or slow. Sharp or vague. Most people try to interrupt that flow. They jump in, splash around, make noise. But the masters, they become the riverbed. They guide from underneath. You don't see it, but you feel it. They don't break the rhythm, they recode it. Here's how. In any dialogue, there's a pattern. An idea is said. Reactions form. People look around for cues. They wait for a signal of where to go next. This is your moment. But not to speak. To breathe. To hold space. To move without drawing attention to the movement. Watch this. Someone in the group says something provocative. The energy spikes. Everyone looks around. You don't speak. You shift your posture. You lean forward just slightly. You glance at one person. You write one thing down. And just like that, the direction changes. No words. No claims. Just placement. Just presence. Because when people aren't sure, they follow whoever seems sure. And certainty isn't loud. It's anchored. Let's bring this closer to home. You're with friends. Someone says, "We should go here." Another disagrees. Instead of picking sides, you say nothing. You look toward one place. Hold the silence for a second, longer than needed. Then say, That's it. Watch how suddenly the room leans toward that option. Not because you argued, not because you sold, but because your centered stillness created a vacuum. People fill vacuums. And your silence was the invitation. That's the strategy. Use body language. Use pacing. Use controlled slowness. Be the one who does not rush. Because stillness steers. Here's what most people miss. The moment you name your direction, you give people something to push against. But when you never name it, they drift into it, unaware. That's how you win rooms without ever fighting for them. It's the art of shaping the air, not just the sound. Subtle example. A leader walks into a room. Everyone's uncertain. He doesn't make a speech. He just stands near the back, waits, breathes. And when the time is right, he nods. One nod. Suddenly, everyone moves. Not because of pressure, but because of alignment. And alignment always favors the one who never fought for it. So here's your tactic. Next time you're in a situation with competing voices, don't speak first. Don't even react. Just observe. Find the thread. And when you speak, make it land like gravity. Short, heavy, unquestioned. Because when you guide without being noticed, they never resist. They just follow. And later, they'll think it was their choice all along. That's the move. That's the level. That's invisible steering. No spotlight. No noisy. Just subtle control that feels like consensus, but was always your direction. But let's go even deeper. If invisible steering is the art of guiding without speaking, then the next level is speaking just enough not to direct, but to reframe through curiosity. Here's the transition. Once you've anchored stillness, you don't need to convince. You just need to ask a better question. Not to get an answer, but to change what the room thinks about. Because questions are silent architects of thought. Let's break it down. Most people talk to defend their view, to be heard, to be right. But the powerful, they talk to redirect the lens, not with commands, with precision curiosity. You ask, do you think that always holds true? Or, what's another way we could look at this? Simple, non-threatening. but deadly. Why? Because the moment someone engages your question, they've stepped into your frame. They think they're exploring their own thought, but actually they're walking the mental hallway you built. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine a colleague says, "I just think we need to act fast. That's the only way to survive right now." Most people would counter, "No, we need to slow down. Think it through." But you tilt your head, hold a pause, then ask, is there a kind of fast that still allows clarity? Boom. Not an attack, not resistance, just a lens shift. Now they're thinking, not about whether to be fast, but how fast could also mean precise. You didn't fight their view, you expanded it. And when you do that, you become the mental authority without ever holding the mic. Here's another nuance. The best questions aren't about facts. They're about filters. They shape how people sort information, not just what they hear. You say, what if the opposite is also true? Do we know that, or are we assuming that? What would it look like if this worked better than expected? Each one peels back a layer. Each one moves them into your terrain. Now pause here. Notice how much control you gained without ever arguing. That's the secret. People resist answers, but they chase questions. And if you design the question carefully, they'll arrive at your destination thinking it was theirs. This isn't manipulation. It's surgical influence. It's guiding the story without being the narrator. So how do you use this in daily life? In any discussion, when emotions run high, when certainty is being weaponized, you don't counter, you don't explain. You ask, would you be open to a different angle? Or, what are we not seeing here? And then, you shut up. Let the silence pull them in. Because your power isn't in the question. It's in the gravity of the space after. They'll lean in. They'll reflect. And most importantly, they'll begin to see you as the one who sees more. Not louder, not smarter, just deeper. And in a world addicted to fast takes, depth wins. So here's the principle. Ask not to know. Ask to shape knowing. Curiosity isn't weakness. It's stealth leadership. And once you master it, you don't need to assert control. You simply ask and control follows. Because whoever guides the questions, guides the thinking, and whoever guides the thinking already won the frame. Let's drop deeper. By now, you've steered through silence. You've masked control inside curiosity. Now, we play with perception itself. Let me say something that might shake your instincts. You don't need to be understood. In fact, some of your greatest power comes from letting people misunderstand you. I know. It sounds counterintuitive. But pause with me here. Most people chase clarity. They want to explain, to be seen, to be got. It's ego. It's impulse. But the wise, the strategic, they know this. Clarity is overrated. Because when they misunderstand you, they reveal their assumptions. And assumptions are leverage. Let me show you. You say something neutral in a meeting. Maybe you offer a vague take. I've seen that go both ways before. Someone jumps in, projecting. So, you're saying it's a bad idea. But you don't correct. You don't clarify. You say, if that's what you heard, and then silence. Now what happened? They thought they decoded you, but now they're uncertain. They realize they might have been too quick, that maybe you're holding something deeper, and that single pause, that lack of correction, it just elevated your frame. Because people assume clarity is confidence. But the truth, unclarity with composure is even more intimidating. It makes them wonder, what does this person know that I don't? Why aren't they reacting? Are they testing me? You've gone from participant to puzzle. And people don't challenge puzzles. They stare at them. They circle them. They respect them. Let's ground this with a real-world story. Two candidates interview for the same high-level job. Candidate A answers every question clearly, enthusiastically, linearly. Candidate B answers slowly, pauses, says things like, that's one way to look at it, or depends what you value most. The result, candidate A seemed polished, but forgettable. Candidate B, hard to read, mysterious, compelling. Why? Because people don't remember what they understood. They remember what made them question. And the uncorrected misunderstanding, it lingers. That's influence. Now here's how you apply it in your world. Someone puts words in your mouth. Let them. As long as it doesn't violate your ethics. Don't rush to clarify. Instead, absorb. Hold. Let it echo. And then, with full presence, say, that's an interpretation. Done. No argument. No defense. Just energy redirection. And if they push, don't bite. The more you resist, the more power you give their frame. But the more you stay still, the more they get tangled in their own spin. Stillness creates gravity, and gravity pulls the frame your way. So here's the deeper truth. The urge to be understood is the fastest way to become small. The willingness to be misunderstood is the beginning of silent dominance. Because if you don't need them to get you, you've already proven you're leading the moment, not reacting to it. Let me ask you this. When do you think influence ends? Most believe it stops the moment the conversation ends. When the words run out, when the room empties, when you say goodbye. But real influence starts when you leave. Because what they feel after you're gone is what sticks. It's not the words you said, it's the aftertaste. And in conversational camouflage, your exit becomes the most important scene in the entire performance. Let me explain. You've masked your dominance. You've framed without framing. You've planted thoughts inside their words. You've let misunderstanding hang like smoke in the room. And now, as you leave them alone with it. They replay the words. They search for clarity. They wonder Did they agree with me? Did they disagree? Were they testing me? This confusion is not a flaw, it's the echo. Because the longer someone replays an interaction, the more their mind wraps itself around your frame. This is what we call post-encounter control. It's how you guide someone without guiding them. By letting them do the heavy lifting, the mental work, the emotional unraveling. And the key, end with quiet friction. Let me show you how. In a conversation, instead of saying, "Great idea, I fully agree," you say, "Interesting take. I'll have to think on that one." That's not closure. That's a loop left open. And open loops demand attention. They follow the person like a shadow. They itch at the back of their mind. They whisper, "There's more to this. You missed something. Go back." And the best part, you didn't push, you didn't manipulate, you withheld. That's the deepest form of control. Let's go deeper. When you leave a meeting, a negotiation, even a casual conversation, don't try to win the final moment. Don't drop a mic. Don't prove anything. Instead, leave space. Let them want your clarity and never quite get it. Let your absence feel heavier than your presence did, because in that space they'll begin to recalibrate around you. This is how myths are made. Not through volume, but through silence that lingers. Think of the most magnetic people you've met. They didn't say much. They didn't over-explain. But when they left you different. Not because they dominated, but because they disrupted your rhythm and didn't fix it. They walked away and let you feel the imbalance. That's power. Now here's how you apply it. In your next conversation, resist the urge to land clean. Don't summarize. Don't reassure. Don't wrap it up in a bow. Just end. Calm. Centered. Unbothered. Say, "Let's see where it goes." Or something to think about. Then pause. Hold the gaze. Nod once. And walk. Not fast. Not slow. Just certain. Because that's the real message. Not what you said, but how you exited. Let's bring this full circle. You started this journey thinking power belonged to the loud, to the bold, to the dominant voices who fill the room. But now you've seen the deeper truth. Power isn't in the noise. It's in what echoes after the noise ends. It's in the person who didn't raise their voice, but raised the temperature of the room without a word. It's in the one who looked harmless, yet everyone walked away, changed, after speaking with them. That's conversational camouflage. The art of guiding deeply, while appearing to simply float. You're not pushing. You're pulling. Quietly, effortlessly, untraceably. So here's your challenge. In the next 24 hours, choose one interaction. Just one. And do this. Don't correct. Don't assert. Don't try to be clear. Instead, mask, mirror, redirect, and exit with calm uncertainty. Watch what happens. Watch how people circle back to your words, trying to decipher them, trying to figure you out, trying to reclaim the frame you never said you owned. That's the power. When you master this, you don't just win arguments, you delete the need for them. You don't dominate a room, you dissolve resistance before it ever forms. Because you've stopped broadcasting and started transmitting subtly, silently, strategically. So next time they ask, "Why do people always listen to you?" you'll smile and say nothing. Because now you understand, real dominance isn't spoken, it's installed. If this shifted something in you, drop a comment below. Let me know which part made you pause. Or better yet, try it. Then come back and tell me what changed. And if you're ready to turn silence into strategy, subscribe. There's more coming. This is just the beginning. Your presence is the message. Make it unforgettable.